Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. And in a minute, welcome to Fear. All I have to say about this Loreweek is this Loreweek is imperfect. If only it could be as beautiful as I. So, I had a really good Gray 17 this morning. Someone who was accusing me of being rampantly arrogant. And like, of all the things you could accuse me of, arrogance, really. It was funny. I like comments. Every day I learn more about myself from the internet. I wouldn't even know who I was if not for the internet. It's fantastic stuff. Anyways, I also just want to share, just because I freaking feel like it. Oh, hang on, I haven't changed the new topic. God damn it. Yeah, I only woke up like 40 minutes ago, by the way. Hang on, where's the current topic? There it is. No, the current topic is... ramble. Next topic will be, let's see... We'll do that for our next topic. There's actually two news points this week that I almost didn't want to talk about at all, to be completely honest with you. It's like, hey! But people have been like, oh, you've got to talk about this, you have no idea, you must talk about this. And then they've grabbed me, and then they shook me. And they shook me, they're like, oh, God. Okay, I'll talk about it, Ugh. Jesus Christ. So, now that the Loreweek Mafia has been by, I do want to comment on one little thing really quick. First of all, anybody ever heard of Chat Surge? I actually hope you haven't. That would be a good thing if you haven't, but I thought I'd ask. Basically, no, Preacher. I don't even remember how to get up there. So I've already kind of name dropped it, so if you want to Google it, go ahead. Please don't use Chat Search. No, seriously. Chat Surge is a program that allows you to flood a Twitch channel. It's specifically designed to flood a Twitch channel with chat to basically shut down the Twitch channel. How's that for fun? Definitely the kind of thing that the world needs, right? A basic Twitch spam bot. That should be illegal. Well, it's funny you bring that up, Gallade. Because the reason I bring it up is that a person who used it over the last year is currently facing... Well, basically, he is being charged with it, and here's the really interesting place. This is the interesting case. He's being charged in a criminal court. Now, for those of you who don't really understand the significance of that, let me drop a little bit of knowledge on you for a second here. There are two really, really distinct types of courts here in the United States and in Canada where this is actually happening. There's civil court and there's criminal court. The two of these are so completely different from each other that they might as well be completely separate functioning entities, right? Civil court and criminal court have completely different rules and completely different severities and blah, blah, blah. The fact that this guy who used this chat spam bot thing is being tried in a criminal court as a criminal case, and currently facing 10 years in prison, by the way, is very interesting. I'm not actually 100% sure what I think of that, but it is definitely one of the first times this has happened, where this kind of online, you know, harassment situation is being tried as a purely criminal case. So, again, I'm not sure what I think of that. I found that very intriguing, though, and I guess we'll find out how it goes over the coming weeks as the trial continues. I can't. I mean, what do you add to that? In slightly lighter news... I'd have to look up the charges. Give me a second. Give me a second. I'll pull up the charges really quick here. I'll do it on my computer, screw it. You don't mind hearing some typing, right? Blah, 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 blah. Mischief in relation to computer data is the specific charge. That's the actual legal charge. Apparently, they've also since then added on to this willful cause of multiple repetitive messages to be transmitted, and multiple unsolicited messages via email or other online forums. By the way, for those of you not aware of the severity of this, the amount of messages this thing was pushing out was apparently 34 messages per minute, which is just a little under 1 every 2 seconds. That's the level of spam we're talking here. So, bam, spam, 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 kind of like that. Anyways, yeah. So, yeah, I know, right? To talk about something slightly more positive, Magic the Gathering Arena. Normal chat speed for popular viewers. Hell, I mean, GDQ chat would blow that out of the water, which is something like 50 messages per second or whatever it is when the sub mode's off. For those of you not aware, Magic the Gathering Arena is still being worked on and is still coming out. We now know how you're going to be able to buy cards for MTG Arena. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, MTG stands for Magic the Gathering. It's a card game. It's arguably the, not the originator, but the codifier for CCGs, collectible card games. Hearthstone, all that stuff, all kind of tie back to MTG to some extent or another. So, they're finally making an actual online version of MTG, which is designed to have everything built into the program, rather than just have you select cards, or have you go do RPG stuff to get cards or whatever. This will actually be, if I'm not mistaken, the 3rd MTG game. Then I'm not even counting the Planeswalker games, which aren't really MTG games, so much as MTG, like, scenarios. But anyways, so here's how you get cards in MTG Arena. I gotta double check my notes here, because this is just some weird stuff here. So, first of all, there will be 2 different types of currencies in MTG Arena, one of which you pay for with real money, one of which you earn with in-game currency. This probably already sounds familiar to everyone. There will be no trading. I'm just pausing for a second, because the very idea of not being able to trade card games in a card game is a little bit strange. I'll come back to that one. So you can buy booster packs, which are exactly what they sound like. They are just booster packs. You can buy draft packs, which are exactly what they sound like. They're just like draft boosters. Anytime you win a given match, you win just a random card, basically. And they're adding this concept called a wild card. Now, the way a wild card works is if you get a wild card, and that wild card can be land, common, uncommon, rare, ultra rare, right? So what happens then, when you have your wild card, is you trade it in, and that wild card becomes one random card of that rarity. So you can turn in a random rare to get a random rare. Very simple, really. Now, one thing they're doing, which I find kind of strange, is most computer versions of card games like these have some kind of mechanic built in order to prevent you from not getting cards for a while. The most common one is the crafting system, like in Hearthstone, where you dust cards you don't like, and then you turn them into new cards that you do like. In MTG Arena, they've decided to do something different. Basically, if you get, I don't know, what's a really dumb card? I suddenly can't think of any. Hang on, where's my deck? Right here. I'm just looking at a random dumb card from my deck. Although there shouldn't actually be a dumb card in my deck, but whatever. Okay, let's say you get a... That's not a dumb card. An Auriok Champion, okay? You get an Auriok Champion. And then you get 4 more, so you have 5 total of these things, right? Or actually, no, I'm sorry, 5 more, so you have 6 total of these cards. Every 6th one of a duplicate that you pick up will actually make it so that you get charges to fill up your vault, okay? Once your vault is full, you get a random wild card. And then you can use that to get some other card. Functionally speaking, like I said, that just replaces the dusting and crafting system of, for example, Hearthstone, which is the most commonly known one. But you could probably understand why that just sounds a little bit slanted against you. Anyways, I want to go back to that trading thing, because as weird as this may sound, I could at least understand why they would not want to allow trading in MTG Arena. I don't fully agree, but I could at least see a reasoning for it. And the reason is very simple. If you introduce trading into a game like this, you are basically going to be rolling out the red carpet for a player economy to start up. And basically maintaining or establishing a player economy is the kind of thing that you do want to do very carefully, and you want to watch very carefully, especially since ignoring the obvious problems that can happen with that, you might end up getting additional legislation on your game as a consequence of this. For example, for those of you not aware, there is an actual player economy in MTG. This is easy to see. All you have to do is walk into any card store or any, hobby store and see how much they're charging for individual cards, because that right there is the function of a player economy. The fact that, here, I'll look that guy up. I was just saying, was that Auriok whatever? Auriok Champion? Hang on. Give me a second. Excuse me. So right now, I could go and buy the Auriok Champion for $14.61 for that one card. It is a rare, apparently. So there you go. Boom. There's that right there is exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to a player economy. Again, not saying I agree with them, but I could at least see that argument. However, it's worth noting that the people making MTG Arena have not made that argument. In fact, to my knowledge, they have made no argument whatsoever about why they've disallowed trading. It is also worth noting that that is also not set in stone yet. The game is not out yet. We'll see if they flip-flop on this one. I'm still going to at least try MTG Arena, but at this point, So, what else? I suppose we'll go ahead and start getting into actual topics here. So let's go ahead and switch this up. Talk about Theme Hospital. And next we'll be talking about... that. What time is it? Don't know yet, Dakota, is the answer to that. I just looked it up, Rogue, seconds ago. Not that I disbelieve you. I suppose it depends on which site you use, obviously. Let's talk about Theme Hospital. So, any of you out there ever play Theme Hospital? I mean, obviously I did. Otherwise I wouldn't care enough to talk about this. So, you haven't played Theme Hospital? Oh my god. Okay, for those of you not aware, the Theme series of games... Really? I'm actually a little surprised by how many people haven't played this game. For those of you not aware, the Theme Hospital series of games is a sort of lighthearted, zany series of games that came out for a while that were kind of like Sim Hospital, basically. Imagine Sim Hospital, except it's funny, and you've basically got Theme Hospital, okay? And there were all sorts of games like that for a while there, and most of them were pretty good, in my opinion. They were worth playing. If you ever actually have a chance to pick it up on GOG or whatever, I do recommend it, at least, you know, on Super Sale or whatever. So anyways, the same developers who made Theme Hospital have gotten together, and they have a new development company called 2 Point Gaming or something like that, and they're making a new one called 2 Point Hospital. Pause for a second here. Sorry. You know, I literally can't hear this song now and not think of Star Trek Online, because I used it for that intro. Anyways, so I'm excited about this. It looks good. I'm not just talking about that, though. What I want to... Oh, you can also find the trailer for it online, where they showcase it, and its general perspective. Like, for example, one of the sicknesses you have to treat is lightheadedness, where your head turns into a light bulb. That's the kind of game this is. That's the simplest way I explain it right there. Now, here's the weird thing. I've seen several interviews by the guys who are making this, and I want to hit you with a few bullet points from those interviews, because I love bullet pointing. The first thing I want to hit you with is the fact that they had so many ideas for continuing the theme style of games, and they just kind of ran out of money and time and interest, so they just kind of walked away from it. But now they're coming back to it, and they're hoping that 2 Point Hospital will be good enough that they could start doing other theme stuff as well. That is such a weird question, Prog. I'm just going to stare at you for a second. Okay, there we go. So, that sounds cool. You know, I'm with that idea. The next thing I want to comment on, and this is the one that really struck me as weird, is that this is not a spiritual successor to Theme Hospital. Now, we want to make it clear that this is a new... Excuse me. This is a new game, a new IP, and not a spiritual successor. We don't want people to think that we're just reskinning the old game. I have a feeling that these developers are either trying to avoid legal issues with the old IP, or don't know what the words spiritual successor mean. One of the two. It was the biggest thing that struck me about the whole interview, was that they were insistent, no, this is not a spiritual successor to Theme Hospital. It's just a spiritual successor to Theme Hospital. Except they didn't say it that way, of course. Now, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with it. I'm still at least partially interested in it. Again, I actually liked Theme Hospital back in the day. But it reminds me of how incredibly stupid everything is right now. And that's really the reason I wanted to bring this up. Like, if I wanted to do a spiritual successor of... Well, let me use an example that's happened recently. Total Annihilation, okay? And I want to call it Planetary Annihilation. Now, I have to, and this actually happened, I have to dance a little bit around the Annihilation thing because I don't have rights to the Total Annihilation label. I am the developer and developers who worked on Total Annihilation, but I don't own Total Annihilation. I own nothing. So I really want to make another Total Annihilation game, so I call it Planetary Annihilation. Now, even that's a little bit too close. But, you know, it's its own IP. It's not an old thing. Because this is a problem that actually happens more often than it should. This is pretty much the reason why spiritual successors exist. The overwhelming majority of spiritual successors are actually made by at least partially the same devs who made the original games. But they don't have the rights, or they don't have the IP, or they don't have the whatever they actually need, the licensing necessary, in order to actually just continue the series. So they have to make a spiritual successor. Now, that's not always true, obviously. Sometimes there are new developers who will show up and say, oh, hey, you know what? I always liked that Annihilation series. I want to make a new Annihilation game. But the amount of times it is the same devs having to bypass the licensing and IP side of it is ridiculous. Yeah, Yooka-Laylee, another good example of this, although Yooka-Laylee wasn't that great. Yeah, I don't know why he's denying it's a spiritual successor. I've never heard anyone deny it's a spiritual successor, but you know, whatever. Yeah, Sins of a Solar Empire, which was a spiritual successor to Homeworld Cataclysm, specifically. I will actually be talking about that next Friday. So, I mean, I guess it's just... mind-boggling. I mean, I don't have much else to add to this. It's just bizarre how we actually exist in a world where I could sit down and make a video game right now. And then in 5 years, if I want to make a sequel to that game, I have to make a new game because I don't own the rights to the game I made. That's normal. That's commonplace. That's... Sorry, I don't have much else to add to this. I had to bring that up. I'll be keeping an eye on 2 Point Hospital as we go. What's next? Oh, Disney mobile games. Alright. How many of you out there, honest question, how many of you out there think it is possible to make a good mobile game? Show of hands. Honest question. Honest question. Let me switch this over while you guys answer that. Whoops. What'll be our next topic? Let's... Oh, I should have done that earlier. Whatever. Let's talk about, that next. I'm sure there is such a thing as a good mobile game. I haven't seen one. I mean, with all sincerity, and I'm not trying to say this to be disparaging, but every game I have seen on the mobile, and if you remember, I spent several months trying there, just basically every day, checking the mobile games market and going down and going down and going down. The best games I saw on the mobile market were ones that were ports of games from another console or from another system. Like, I would say Plants vs. Zombies was a pretty decent game on the mobile, except, Parcheesi? Gary, you are now Parcheesi, apparently. You know, Hearthstone, that's pretty good. That's a PC game. Cat Quest, no, that's also a PC game. How about all the Telltale games? Those are on there. Did you know you could get KOTOR on here? Anyways, I'm sure there is such a thing as a good mobile game. I have to be completely honest. I have reached the conclusion that I'm just not going to like mobile games even if they're good. I can't stand the interface of touchscreen, and any of the games I feel could actually work with that kind of touchscreen interface aren't there, so whatever. But regardless of quality, regardless of whether it's possible or not. Nice, Preacher. No, I don't think I would call Plague Inc. a good game, personally. I mean, if you guys like it, that's, you know, no judgment. That's not my purpose here. That's not my intent, is to say that people suck for their preferences. But here's what I'm bringing this up. Disney, you knew it'd come up. Disney decided to sit down for about 7 months, I think, and basically walked out to the mobile gaming development market and said, who wants the licensing rights to make Disney mobile games? And what happened was 7 months of people basically eating each other alive, desperate to get a hold of the Disney market. Because, let's be 100% clear, if you make a Disney mobile game, you are going to be swimming in cash. Disney simply has way too much market saturation, especially amongst kids. The right to make a Frozen game, even now, would be the kind of thing where people would be like, oh my god, you know, right? So, this basic war was waged amongst these mobile devs, and sadly, I wish I could tell you the truth, but I don't know it, so all I can do is speculate, because there are 4 or so companies which won this war. This has just happened last week. They finally sat down and said, you, and you, those 4, get the rights to make our mobile games. Now, every single one of those companies' press release about this is basically, we're super excited about this, oh my god, because of course they are. But, what I'm curious about is why, and this is where we get to the speculation thing, why did Disney pick these 4 developers? Now, I never heard of them. I actually didn't even write their names down. Give me a moment here. See if I can pull that list up really quick here. Of course it's not going to hit. What do we got here? Ludia, Glue, Gameloft, and Purblue. Those are the companies that won the contracts. No idea who these people are. Like, I've never even heard of these companies. But they are going to basically be the ones running Disney's mobile market for the coming year, at the very least 1 year. Now, for those of you not aware, it's also worth noting that Disney actually shut down a decent amount of their own internal mobile stuff, including Marvel Heroes, which was one. Or excuse me, no, they shut down their internal stuff, which was Avalanche, and then they shut down their stuff, which was being done externally. In other words, this isn't the first time they've had a lot of mobile games. They just chopped off their existing mobile developers and set up these 4 guys as the new guys. Again, don't know their qualifications. I don't know why they picked these 4 companies. But I have to admit, I like the idea, because this wouldn't be that out of bounds for Disney to sit down and say, all right, make a real game, okay? Make a real game on the mobile and smack frickin' Goofy on it. I guess we'll see, because again, this is a very recent announcement, just last week, so we'll see what comes of that. I'm actually kind of curious. Not expecting too much. Well, I don't know if I'd say that they picked EA, but again, which one, Prog, is my question to you. I remember Castle of Illusion. That was a good one. I remember the Mickey Ness game. That was crap. You remember the Mickey Ness game? Ugh. Not a good game. Yeah, Telltale-ish game. Actually, speaking from experience, Telltale games work perfectly on mobile. My niece has actually been playing through Telltale Minecraft on the phone very, very periodically, and it's actually really good for a mobile interface. Go figure. It's one of the very, very, very few games I feel actually works with a mobile interface. Sue, what am I talking about? Oh, I'm talking about net neutrality next. You guys love talking about net neutrality, right? It's just the best thing ever to talk about. Right? I mean, everyone loves net neutrality and talking about it. Oh, yeah, of course, said Slayer. I mean, why wouldn't I let her play that? What will we talk about next? I guess... do you want to talk about something good or bad first? Or, actually, no, that's a bad way to phrase that. Because both of these aren't good or bad, they're just weird. Let's talk about this next. Okay, so, let's talk about 22 states. I don't have the list in front of me, but it's 22 states who are currently undergoing a lawsuit of basically the federal government. Now, I'm going to try and drop the jokes for a second to talk about this, because the general idea is that they are... Let me explain something to you guys really quick. I know this is going to sound weird, and I know some of you already understand this, so forgive me. But there's a world of difference between legality land and reality land, okay? Now, this is hard to explain without specific examples, so I'm going to do my best here without getting into specific examples. But if I say to you, hey, blah, 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 right? I tell you something. It's actually fairly easy for you to believe me, for me to convince you of this, for me to prove that what I am telling you is true. You know, I could point to this, or I could show you this, or whatever. It is within relative easy in reality to showcase something as a accepted truth, right? You know, this is green. Boom, I've already proven it. I don't even have to say anything else because you can tell it's green screened out. Here, I'll put it in front of my face just so you can really see, right? Easy. Legally proving that this is green is trickier. The best way I've ever thought of to explain how legality land works is in order to legally prove something, you have to basically prove it in a way that is considered legally acceptable. So in other words, I can't just point to this and say it's green. I would have to, you know, again, this is a made-up example, so I can't come up with anything, but, you know, I would have to follow the proper procedures of establishing A, B, and C in order to prove that this is, in fact, green, legally speaking, even though you can look at it right now and it's clearly green, right? This is the difference between legality and reality. Now, this actually... This is, but it's red. See, Wilson right there, he's terrible. He's a lawyer. He needs to be burning. But the real problem here is when, and because I've heard people talk about this, especially with regards to net neutrality. If I was to tell you the net neutrality thing should be reestablished, your reaction to that is probably going to be, duh. And I bet most people, especially people who don't really understand how the legal system works, think that I could just, a lawsuit to make that happen would be an easy win. Because it's just such a duh thing, right? But to legally attack, to go after, I just forgot their names. The people, the frickin' division that decided to, Ajit Paul's thing. God, I can't think of the name. Oh my god. I just woke up like 30 minutes ago. Give me a break. I guess it takes more like 50 minutes now. Hang on. I'm gonna look this up before people tell me. The FCC. Thank you. God, I am tired. In order to legally go after the FCC, we can't just go after the FCC and say what you did is wrong. We can't just go after you and say what you're doing is bad for companies, is bad for people. What you're doing is encouraging a monopoly situation. We can't just say that. That's all in reality land. And again, you see the division here, because in reality land, it would take me 10 seconds to convince someone that net neutrality is a good thing. It's easy. I spent an entire Loreweek sitting down and explaining net neutrality and why it's a good thing. Yes, I did know that, Hazardous. So we have to legally attack them. Right? And by we, I mean the people who have the capacity and time and money to do that. Good thing, though. The specific tactic they're using is hysterical, because they're going after the FCC for two major things. They're actually going after them for like 7 things. Something you end up learning pretty quickly about the legal system is you never like suit someone or sue someone for one thing. You get them for as many things as possible. So even if they prove these 5 or whatever are wrong, you still got the 4 that are left. So the two major things they're going after them for are overstepping their bounds and ignoring their mandate. And I want to talk about both of those really quick here. Yes, and patience, very true. The war wasn't never going to be over here, preacher. I told you all that. I told you the war wasn't over. Everyone was like, oh my god, net neutrality's dead. I'm like, guys, no, trust me. We lost a battle. So, let's talk about the overstepping bounds. The specific legalese at this one is a little bit ridiculous, and I'm not going to go into full detail because it's a little bit ridiculous, but the general gist of this is the idea that the FCC is trying to... So for those of you not aware, the FCC is trying to supersede state regulation on this one, to specifically ensure that states cannot have net neutrality when federal does not. Now, that is actually debatably outside of the mandate of the FCC. They don't... again, this is all the realm of debatable, but what is being argued by these 22 states in their lawsuit is that the FCC does not have the capacity to do that, and as such has overstepped their actual authority. And therefore, they will be able to shut down their previous action as a consequence of the fact that they were not legally capable of doing it. Now, I don't mean the net neutrality thing specifically, I mean the superseding the state thing. But then, we get to the second thing, which is overriding their mandate. That's actually usually not true, Hazardous, in real life. For the most part, state law overrides federal law. There are, of course, exceptions. Most of those have to do with funding. I'm not getting into that. So, the next thing to talk about is the ignoring meaningful participation. So it's actually within the mandate, the legal mandate of the FCC, to allow for a meaningful level of participation from both government officials and people on the street, in other words, a common person, to interact with them and to make their voice heard, vis-a-vis any current FCC policies or upcoming votes. Now, for those of you who don't know this, there were literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, and I don't just mean normal people, but actual government people as well, who swarmed in and basically said, this is not cool, don't do this. I do not support this. This is unacceptable. I'm not even talking about the bots that were used, which we kind of brought up. Let's say, because those are obviously bots and easily provable as bots. I'm talking about the actual people who showed up and said, I am not in support of this. I am not in support of this. I don't agree with this. This shouldn't happen, yada, 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 yada. Now, as you know, thanks to the fact that the FCC did, in fact, rule to cancel the net neutrality laws and reclassify it as a Title I rather than Title II, all of that input was ignored. This is the main thrust of their argument here, and the main legal point that they're making, that the FCC basically took an illegal action because all actions the FCC takes are supposed to allow, and I again quote word for word, for meaningful participation. This is an interesting situation we find ourselves in, guys. We're trying to win by a technicality. Although the good news is that this is one of the easiest things in the world to prove, even legally. It's very easy to prove that they were ignoring the overwhelming amount of information that was saying, don't do this. Problem is, and this is why I'm still not super excited about this, because it would be, I guarantee you right now, the defense they're going to be using is something along the lines of, oh, we didn't actually ignore meaningful participation. We just decided to deliberate on how much of that was white noise and how much of it was actual people making their voices actually heard. And dividing that line is going to be something that's going to be an interesting legal battle. I once again remind you that a fairly large, a couple million bots decided to flood the FCC channels about this in favor of destroying net neutrality, so we'll see. It is worth noting, by the way, that if they go ahead and win this, if the 22 states win this and go ahead and overturn this, which would be nice, this is going to set some interesting precedent for the FCC, and I'm not actually sure if that's a good thing going forward. Yeah, the question is if they're going to have actual legal technical experts. See, here's the weird thing. Strange thing, guys. Again, let me speak to some legal experience for a second. I know tech stuff very well. Like, I'm not a super expert, but I could probably sit down and explain a lot of things about, networking or programming or hardware to you, and you'd probably understand what I'm talking about. Thing is, I am not accredited legally. So, if I were to walk into a courtroom, I could go ahead and say, blah, 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 blah. But you could literally rule as a lawyer that everything I just said should be thrown out the window and not considered, because I'm not legally accredited. There are people who have jobs like mine or like Gary's who specifically are legally accredited in order to be called into courtrooms and courthouses in order to deal with these kind of situations. What is going to matter then, moving forward, is if they could bring in, if the 22 states can bring in a legally accredited, I guess a software engineer in this case, or maybe a verification engineer, to then go ahead and prove legally, accreditedly, that these are bots. If they manage to do that, yeah, that's going to be an open and shut case at that point. But they need to bring in that expert to do that, and those experts get paid a decent amount of money. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So what kind of precedence things? Well, I guarantee you that this would probably lead to, I shouldn't say guarantee probably, there's a high chance of probability that this would lead to increased legislation and restriction on the FCC itself, which, as weird as this may sound, I don't actually think is a good thing. The FCC does actually do a lot of things that do not involve net neutrality, which is actually good. I discovered this when I was looking up Ajit Pai's career record, basically, and everything he'd been doing ever since he became part of the FCC. And I found out that in addition to being a spokesman, stooly, worthless sack of crap, he was also doing some good work at the FCC, which was just kind of like, that's always a weird thing to find out, right? Anyways, so this is probably going to lead to extended legislation or restriction or regulation on the FCC, possibly limiting what the FCC actually has oversight of, or putting more requirements upon the FCC to act in the future. You know, one of those two things. So yeah, this is my opinion, and I know we're getting really dangerously close into actual politics here, but it is my opinion that that kind of thing is not necessarily a good thing to happen. However, someone asked earlier, is this the best strategy to use? I think it was the Bartman asked that. Let me go ahead and say that I am not a legal expert by any stretch of the definition. However, I do have an unfortunately personal experience in understanding the reality land versus legality land thing. And I do understand that when it comes to legal battles, you have to take something that you feel you can legally prove in order to try and win for reality. So this is not a bad strategy from the state's perspective, going after these two things. I'm just not sure if this is going to be good long term. Yeah, not quite like that. Ajit Paul isn't evil. He's just a massive moron. Oh, he's also an insulting git, but that's unrelated. Did any of you guys see that thing, that immensely insulting video he put out? Here's all the things you'll still be able to do once net neutrality is destroyed. Let's see. I'm going to be able to use Snapchat, because that's all we use the internet for, right? I'm going to be able to buy spinners, because that's all we use the internet for, right? I wanted to smack him. Anyways, moving on. Ajit Paul's dumb. Moving on. What's the next thing I'm talking about? Labo. Has anyone pronounced it yet? I don't actually know how to pronounce Nintendo. Excuse me. Whoops. As you can tell, I'm not completely well yet, so forgive the occasional coughing fits. Okay. Timestamp. Mini Zan hasn't actually seen Labo yet. I showed it to Zan, though, and her reaction was, oh, that sounds cool. I find that funny. So, okay, this is... Yeah, I don't want to talk about that last topic, I'll be blunt. Don't worry, it'll be all about finances, because I know you love that. So let's talk about the Nintendo Labo. Labo? Labo? Laba? Man, I don't frickin' know. I'm gonna keep saying Labo, because that's what my mind is automatically saying. Because they don't say it in the trailer, they just say da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and there's no, like, pronunciation. Anyways. So, yeah, I was gonna say, I actually know personally, and have talked to, on the internet, a large number of parents who have basically already pre-ordered one. They're already on board with getting this, getting a Labo. Okay, so I have no intention to buy one. Let's just go and start with that. I put out a tweet about this like 10, 20 minutes after this announcement went out. And the tweet was basically, you know how I said Nintendo's hard to predict? I was right. Because they are. This is Nintendo being full-on Nintendo. This is just Nintendo in your face Nintendo. I believe the term then would be full frontal Nintendo. This is them deciding, you know what we should do with our extremely popular and very well-selling console? Let's make a physical peripheral for this console, which is made of cardboard, in order to go ahead and turn it into more of a toy game rather than a video game. That is such a Nintendo thing to do. I don't even know what to make of that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about, like, God, I don't even know where to start. So, obviously, this is basically selling peripherals and toys. Some of them do look reasonably fun. And I want to stress the way I'm saying this, because I'm one of those people who looked at the, what was it, the 1-2 Switch? You know, the little mini games you get with the Switch console. Where is my Switch? It's right here. So, like, you know, the little mini game thing where you're supposed to be able to, you know, do this and do, like, little mini games, and it's all stupid and dumb. It looks like a better representation of that same idea. Physical mini games to be played with the Switch. So that does seem like a generally positive thing. Now, they also, it does look like it's relatively creative. See, the problem is, some of the things I'd like to talk about, I literally can't, because we don't have all of the information yet. We don't have all of the details yet. They have said that they will offer replacement parts for free. They have said that there will be, replacement parts, additional parts of peripherals that you can buy. No idea on what they are. No idea on price. They have said that there will be additional software to come out with this. No idea what it is. They have said there will be additional stuff that you can make with these things. No idea what that is. And they've also said there's going to be a do-it-your-own kit to try and make your own cardboard stuff out of, literally a box in your house if you want to. Now, that's kind of cool if that part of this is true. Remember, all of this is still the realm of we're not sure because this was just announced. But if you can actually take your Amazon box and turn it into one of these things like this, it probably won't work quite as well. But if you can do that and then just buy the game and have it, that's kind of cool. Oh yeah, we also don't know what you have to do to procure the games, the video games themselves. If they're just going to be downloadable for free, or if they come with the Labo, or if you have to buy them separate from the Labo. Again, don't know. Now here's the biggest problem. And this is, again, why this is fully Nintendo, is because the Labo is going to be like $70 freaking dollars. There's the multi-kit one, which comes with, at the very least that we know, it comes with piano mode, race kart mode, robot mode, not the fighting robot, the other robot, and fishing mode, and then like 2 other modes that we don't actually know what they are yet, because again, lack of information. And then you could buy the punching Labo thing, which basically sets you up with a freaking mech suit of cardboard, which you then use to go ahead and fight stuff in a game that was actually supposed to come out on the Wii U, believe it or not, which has been shifted over to the Switch now. But yeah, $70. That is very Nintendo. That is such a Nintendo thing to do. Is to charge a fairly decent chunk of change for whatever it is they're putting out. As I've said before, I mean, we talked about this semi-recently when it came to their virtual store stuff. Dropping $10 for a SNES game is just kind of... Now, whether or not the Labo cardboard stuff is going to be of high quality, don't know. I mean, I have to admit, I automatically assumed that the cardboard would be nice, high-quality cardboard and would therefore last for longer than a minute. Because, I mean, for those of you not fully aware of this, there are different qualities of cardboard. There is crappy, bendy, falls apart in a few minutes cardboard, and then there's cardboard that's still, it still has a razor-sharp edge years later. Like, I actually have, right over there, my Wii U box, for example, which is still in very good condition because it was higher quality cardboard than, for example, whatever Amazon sends me every week. So, who knows? This is, again, the realm of assumption. We don't know. This doesn't even come out for a couple months. So I guess we'll see on that one. I also predict that they will have supply issues because it's Nintendo, and of course they're going to have supply issues. I mean, maybe it's just me being cynical at this point. I don't know. I do want to say that... So... Mostly, everything I've been saying up to this point has been from the perspective of someone who doesn't make a huge amount of money and, doesn't have... I mean, I've got a niece, but I don't have a, child of my own, and probably wouldn't have the time to play this right now. So this is all basically what I like to call the pragmatic, realistic perspective. Let me shove the pragmatic me out the window for a second and say that I'm hugely in favor of this from a purely creative and historical perspective, because this is the kind of thing that only a company like Nintendo can really get away with. Nintendo, and I've said this for years now, Nintendo has the ability to just kind of do things because they're Nintendo. Because they have such an insane market presence. Because they have roots going into the very depths of video gaming as a concept, in addition to as an actual functional market. Because they have tremendous financial power backing them in multiple countries, they can take a hit. They can experiment. And I've pointed this out, again, this is not new. I've been pointing this out since, got the frickin' Virtual Boy. Nintendo has a long-standing tradition of just trying things and throwing things at the wall because they're experimenting, because they can get away with that. And I am in favor of that because if I could be completely blunt, and I know this is going to sound terrible and indie and hipster or whatever, but it actually bothers me every now and again from a creative perspective and from a historical perspective how many companies don't try things. I understand it. I probably understand it better than most people because I understand the finances behind it. When you try something, you are throwing money into a hole hoping that it will produce more than it went into it. It is almost pure gambling when you try stuff from my financial perspective. Why do you think so many people have to focus group everything to the death? Why do you think so many movie companies and video game companies and television shows have to try and stay within the realm of something that is quote-unquote safe? It's because something that is safe is a guaranteed sell. But Nintendo says, let's make freaking cardboard. And it's nice to know that there are still companies, and Nintendo's not the only one who does it, I gotta be clear, but it is nice to know that there are companies who still try things. Even if they're failures. God damn it, at least they tried, you know? Sorry, rant off. That's hysterical, Preacher. You know what? What Takoida says here is absolutely true. Motion controls were one of the prices of experimenting. And I've been a very vocal opponent of motion controls for forever. But, God damn it, at least they tried something. And you know what? It is worth noting that every now and again Nintendo tries something and it is an awesome idea. I can prove that within recent history because this is called the Switch. And it is an awesome, awesome idea. It's just worth noting that for every Switch, we have 2 or 3 Virtual Boys. I mean, how many of you remember the Power Glove? I'm sure most of you remember the Power Glove. I actually had a Power Glove, believe it or not, you know. Yeah, the DS, that is another fantastic example of something that just kind of... explosion of good idea, basically. Hell, arguably the Game Boy. That's true. Not all awesome ideas sell. That is actually true. Yeah, the Wii did sell like crazy. Shouldn't have, but it did. Anyone remember Rob? That was an old one. That was kind of part of the other thing. And of course, I already mentioned the Virtual Boy. God. Anyone remember how the GameCube actually had 3D functionality built into it? They never really went anywhere with it, but it did actually have the ability to do the beginnings of what would become the 3D system they use on the 3DS. Anyways, so I don't really have much else to say about the Nintendo Labo. Labario. I don't know. It's a thing. It's Nintendo trying stuff. Yay, I'm not going to buy one. I don't have $70 to plunk down for something that I probably won't use. But I'm glad they're trying stuff. Now, where's our Smash announcement? So, where's my timestamp? There it is. Now we're going to talk money. Money. That's all we talk about on this show. I swear to God. It's time to talk about YouTube. Alright, so let's start with something. Let me start off by saying that I had no intention to talk about YouTube today. None. I'll explain a little bit why in a minute, but I had no desire or intention to even bring up the YouTube topic this week. Then I had roughly everyone in the world ask me about it. Now, that sounds like a slight exaggeration, and that's because it is. But I do have to say that when I say everyone asked me about this, I had 3 people in real life, as in not related to the show, just people I talk to on a daily basis, ask me separately and independently, are you going to be okay with the YouTube changes? 3 people in my life. My dad, my sis, and Gary. So let's talk about the YouTube thing. So one of the things I like to do on my show is predict why. Why is this happening? And obviously I'm an incredibly arrogant person who is always right about everything. However, for the most part, from my perspective, anytime I try to guess the why of something, it's just me throwing darts into the dark and hoping I'm hitting the dartboard over there somewhere. So, Oh, sorry, Gary was asking me if I was walking away from YouTube, which, by the way, is not even a possibility right now, and won't be for the foreseeable future. So, if I committed to Twitch, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind Twitch streaming full time. I think I would be happier with that overall than YouTubing and Twitch streaming. But no, I'd lose a whole lot of money if I quit YouTube. So anyways, let's talk about why YouTube's doing this. The best guess I have, and I swear I don't mean this as a joke, is that there are a bunch of executives in bad suits in a room who are idiots, who are trying to impress the other executives in bad suits in a room who are idiots, and trying to say, well, I need to make sure that YouTube is more properly profitable. So I'm thinking what we should do is we should do the 10% approach. Oh, yes, good idea, good idea. Peas and carrots, peas and carrots. Now, again, I want to stress, even though I said that in a humorous tone, I mean that with total sincerity. That is my best guess for why they're doing this. What is the 10% approach? The 10% approach is a fallacy. The 10% approach is something, and this has been proven so wrong so many times it's actually ridiculous, is when you take, okay, you write down everything that you're making money-wise, whether this is services, or maybe it's expenditures, or maybe it's the actual products you sell, right? And you chop off the bottom 10%. You say, pwah, get rid of it. Why? Because it's making only the bottom 10% of your income. So whatever it is, chop it off, right? The incorrect logic here that is being put on display is what we're going to do is we're going to stop selling or producing or paying, whatever this is at the bottom, and therefore we will be more profitable. Now, I probably don't even have to explain why this is a stupid idea and why this is literally a fallacy in logical argument. But, moving on. So, we look at the bottom 10% and we chop it off. Now, what does this have to do with YouTube? Well, in YouTube's case, chopping off the bottom 10% means chopping off the bottom 10% of their actual, what is effectively their employees. Now, I know that's not literally true, but YouTube itself, this is funny, YouTube does not actually produce anything. Not really. YouTube's actual business is about the handling of the infrastructure, of the conversion rates between FLVs and MP4s and WebMs and every other file, MKVs, and adjusting that all out into a nice, easy-to-use output, and storing all that up on a server somewhere and making sure those pipes are still connected, all that stuff. Basically, they are handling a data center and video conversion service at a massive scale. That is what YouTube actually does. So they don't produce anything. Now, I'm stressing the way I'm saying this, because as Takoida just pointed out, as several people in chat just pointed out, YouTube is a service industry. They are trying to produce, or excuse me, they are trying to present a service, but they don't produce anything. It is us who actually produce content that then goes on YouTube that YouTube uses to make money. Now, this is how this arrangement has always worked. This is literally the handshake right here. If I were to, for example, try to host my videos locally, and I'm not talking about like truly local private data center, which is something that is, one of those pie-in-the-sky goals someday. I'm talking about if I were to go to one of the YouTube services, like the 15 that Sci-Fi Debris has been going through over the last couple of years, and say, I want to host my videos, the amount of hassle that goes into that is larger than you'd think. Trying to make sure that my file format is going to be properly transcoded out into something that your browser can read, whether you're in Britain, or whether you're in Germany, or whether you're in Sweden, or whether you're in Austria, or whether you're in the United States, or whether you're in Canada, is actually a fairly large amount of garbage. There's a lot that goes into that, is what I'm trying to say. YouTube basically says, we'll handle all that, and we'll handle your storage space, but you give us stuff that we can make money off of. That's the handshake. That's the deal that all YouTube content creators make with YouTube, whether they are aware of it or not. Now, yes, this is basically why YouTube doesn't have any real competition, except for Pornhub. Now, that may sound like a joke, but it's actually not. There is an unfortunately growing precedent that Pornhub is where people who can't put stuff on YouTube go to. Because believe it or not, there is stuff that is not porn on Pornhub. Now, I don't want to get too much into that for obvious reasons. No, we're not switching the Lore Runner over to Pornhub. But it is basically the second option. It is basically the number 2 option right now. And that's kind of sad. Is that that's our number 2 option. YouTube, Pornhub. Who, Mike Romano? Oh, wait, no. I don't know who TJ is. Okay, fine. It's super sad. I'll agree with that. It's super duper sad that those are our 2 options. Like, don't bring up Daily Motion. They are a joke compared to the other options. Anyways. So, now that we've established what YouTube is, YouTube, as I basically think I just made clear, relies on people like me. You know, I hate to call myself out on that. People like us, people like YouTube content creators, in order to be able to continue making money. Now, the vast majority of money they make is on ad revenue. I could probably sit here and talk for a couple of hours about the very concept, philosophically, of ad revenue, and why it's one of those grand illusions, but I'm not going to get into that. Let's just all accept for a moment that ad revenue is something that works, and let's not get into the whys and the wherefores of that. So YouTube brings in a fairly large amount of ad revenue. In fact, an actually huge amount. Now, let me go ahead and admit something that is... So we've been talking about facts for now. Let's get into the realm of opinion, okay? So, opinion. I think that Alphabet, or whatever they call themselves nowadays, is trying too hard to make YouTube into one of their pillar sub-companies. Now, let me explain what I mean by that really quickly. When you're an umbrella company like Alphabet or whatever they call themselves right now, we've got your pillars that hold up your house, and then you've got all the other things that make your house functional. This is a terrible analogy, just bear with me. The pillars are the things that make the overwhelming majority of the money. I'm talking like 80% of your income come from the pillar companies. They're the what's fund the rest of your organization. Those other companies are there for 2 major reasons. One, they're there for pet projects or experiments. In other words, things that interest you personally, or things that you want to just kind of dabble in because, you know, there's an interest in it, or things you want to try out to maybe someday they might make a new market, you know. You never know, right? Experimental stuff. Then, the other purpose that the other companies serve is to balance your taxes. Now, most people probably actually know what I'm talking about here, but it's really, really simple and easy to explain. Let's assume for a moment that I am a wildly successful umbrella company, and I mean I am just making money hand over fist. Well, that's terrible, because that means I am going to owe an absolutely insane amount of taxes. So one of the biggest and easiest ways to balance the books, taxes-wise, is to have failed companies under me, companies that are literally in the red. Because those companies then count against the overall tax balance of the umbrella corporation itself. Marvel. Good example of a company that for a long time specifically went out of its way to have failed companies as tax havens. Disney themselves do this and have done this for years. Fox did this for years, you know. Now, you probably already see where I'm going with this. It is my opinion and speculation, again, we're still in the realm of speculation, that the Alphabet company, or whatever the hell they call themselves now, I should look it up at some point, are trying to make YouTube into a pillar company rather than accepting themselves as a tax company. Because YouTube is one of those things that, in addition to, let's be honest with ourselves, providing a form of service that is almost unheard of in human history. And by the way, obvious boilerplate, obviously I am biased here because I literally rely on YouTube to eat and breathe. I don't remember Revenstick. I guess I'll look it up. Hang on. I'm making me look this up. I know they changed their name recently. I don't remember what to. What do you call yourselves now? Hang on. Give me a minute. Blah, 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 blah. No, apparently it is actually still Alphabet on the top. Although they have been renaming a bunch of other stuff. Maybe that's why I keep getting confused. Whatever. Point being, I've lost my train of thought. With the amount of service that YouTube provides to the world culturally, with the amount of access that YouTube provides to Google and to Alphabet when it comes to being able to do just about anything. I mean, I know this is going to sound weird, but the amount of market saturation that is granted to Alphabet simply via YouTube and nothing else is kind of crazy when you think about it. Let's say Google comes up with some new product, right? Or some new tech or some new service. Do you know how incredibly easy and cheap and widespread Google can now advertise that, basically for free? Oh, of course, Lord of Mordor. The availability of that from an internal perspective is huge. And of course, YouTube is the kind of thing that buys, for lack of a better way to put it, brownie points. Keeping YouTube up and running buys a huge amount of consumer trust and trust amongst other companies. YouTube is, to get to my point, YouTube is an invaluable tool, even if it's not making money. In fact, I would say especially if YouTube is not making money. If YouTube is in the red, then that is still an invaluable tool for the Alphabet Corporation, for the Umbrella Corps. I know that keeps sounding like I'm making a Resident Evil joke. I'm not. It's just the term. It's an umbrella corporation. What do you want from me? So now that I've given that opinion on this matter, let's talk about the 80-20 concept and a little bit more about that 10% thing. Now, I've already kind of mentioned the obviousness of how stupid it is to chop off your bottom 10%. I think that's fairly self-apparent. YouTube, right? God damn it, man. Oh, I don't even have my Kleenex now. So, if, I mean, you know what? Do I even need to go into the 10% thing? Isn't it really, really obvious why chopping off your bottom 10% is stupid? Like, ignoring the incredibly obvious fact that if you chop off your bottom 10%, you know, a year from now you're still going to have a bottom 10%, and that you've basically just chopped off income without regard to other thought processes, not trying to cut your overhead, not trying to cut your expenditures, just let's stop producing that bottom 10% of income. That's so obvious, but let's talk about something a little less obvious. Let's talk about the 80-20 concept, okay? The 80-20 concept is one of those really strange things about finances in the real world that has been true, and people have argued for years why it's true. Like it's almost a mathematical certainty. Not quite, but it is almost a mathematical certainty. And it's such a weird thing that it is. The 80-20 concept is very simple. 80% of your customers pay 20% of your income, and 20% of your customers pay 80% of your income. That's the 80-20 concept. Or the 20-80 concept, if you prefer. It doesn't matter which way you say it. Now, that is so true for so many things across so much of everything that it is kind of strange when you really sit back and think about it. It's true for me. 20% of my patrons put in 80% of the money I make on this show. And 80% of the patrons put in 20% of the money I make on this show. That is roughly true. The 80-20 concept is a near universal constant. And it's strange when you think about it. Now, here's where we get back into YouTube specifically, because one of the biggest theories I've heard tossed around about why YouTube is doing this in particular is the fact that we need to switch to another song here. There we go. Yeah, let's do it. There we go. Let's do this song. One of the most common theories I've heard is that YouTube is trying to specifically go out of the way to get rid of small content creators. Now, one of the things YouTube themselves have said about this announcement is we want to assure you that most of the people who are going to be demonetized only make like $100 a year or whatever, or $200 a year, or some absolutely minuscule amount of money, right? Now, obviously, whoever wrote that doesn't know how much money $100 can be. Let me give you a personal perspective just really quick. Once upon a time, before I switched over to Patreon, I actually did make money on YouTube. For those not curious, right now I make 0 cents on YouTube because I actually went out of my way to demonetize my show. That was a very careful and calculated move that, to date, has been the correct move. I did that over 2 years ago now, and that has continued to be correct ever since. But once upon a time, I did actually, have ads revenue on YouTube, and I did actually make ad revenue on YouTube. And it was not a lot of money. It was about $200 a month. The thing is, speaking as someone who is, has been really, really poor to the point of destitute, $200 a month can be a very large amount of money. That could be all of my food for an entire month. That could be nuking all bills in their entirety that I otherwise have no capacity to pay. So, granted, $200 a month probably sounds like a very small amount of money. But when it's in addition to an existing job, for example, if you already have a day job, a part-time job, and then you make a little bit of money on the side on YouTube, that can help. So, from a real-life perspective, from the perspective of someone who has been destitute, I don't really find that to be a particularly engaging argument. That, it's just this minuscule amount of money. Now, let me go ahead and add some reality and fact to this for a moment. One of the things that I have heard discussed as one of the possible reasons why they're doing this is because they want to get rid of some of the fees and bills that they pay on their end in order to process this and pay out the piddlings of money to the thousands of people who make a couple hundred a month or whatever. Let me just go ahead and say that if YouTube is having a problem with that, then they are a bunch of morons. Because, speaking as someone who's actually done work with regards to credit card and bank transactions on a regular basis, can tell you, if YouTube has a thing where they regularly pay out thousands of people small amounts of money, then they should have gone to a bank or should have gone to a credit union and said, hey, and made a large-term contract with this, which basically makes it next to free for them to do despite the large number of transactions. I hope that all that made sense, but the bottom line is that should not be a consideration. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm saying it should not be. It would be incredibly easy for a company like freaking YouTube. I mean, I could do that with my show, and I'm a one-man show. It would be incredibly easy for a company like YouTube to walk up to, I don't know, Chase Masterson or something. All right, that's the name of a person. What's the name of Chase Function? God, I can't remember. Anyways, whatever. To go to them and say, hey, we want to start routing our payments through you. We're going to be having, ballpark this many thousand people a month. Let's make a deal. And the bank will say, okay, let's make a deal. And shakong, done. I mean, I'm skipping over a few steps, but it is not a difficult thing to do. There are companies in place. Chase Manhattan, thank you. There are companies in place right now who can specifically design their entire function around this crap. So that's not a valid reason, is what I'm trying to say. Even if it is actually a problem for them, that's their fault. Next point. Let's get back to the 80-20 thing. Sorry, I went a little bit off to the side. Let's get back to the 80-20 thing. So one of the ideas here is trying to chop out the 80% making the 20%. In other words, trying to make it so that the 80% of the people stop, and that basically the same thing that Blip wanted. You remember Blip TV before they died? One of the things Blip TV did was they said, you know what? We know that 20% of our producers produce 80% of our money. We want to get rid of 80% of our producers who produce 20% of our money. They basically chopped out 80% of their own content creators, including me, by the way. I was actually on Blip very briefly, right towards the end, before Blip started chopping people out. Yeah, I'd hate that job, though, Metalsiv. I have enough problems with suicide as is. I don't feel like giving myself another reason. Anyway, so Blip specifically went for the 80-20, what I like to call the 80-20 fallacy. In other words, they sat down and said, hey, let's get rid of these 80% because we don't want that 20% of our income. I mean, it's only 20%. It's the minority of our income. It should be really obvious why deliberately chopping out 20% of your income should be a bad thing. But let me also explain the other reason this is a bad thing, because now you have created a hostile work environment and a situation in which you're not cycling content. Now, this is especially important for a service industry. You have to always be keeping in mind the cycle of content. Let's take a hypothetical. Let's assume for a moment that there are 5 people on YouTube, and those 5 people like are super huge shows. You know, they all make a ridiculous amount of money, 80% of the income for YouTube. Okay, these 5 are the 20%. Just bear with me. So these 5 people are producing an insane amount of content. So you say, you know what? Screw all these other people. Let's just chop them out. So now you have a situation where these 5 people are not the 20%, they are the 100%. This is all your content is coming from these people. New people try to get into this system, but because you made this huge barrier to entry, they will never get to the point where they become the 6th person. You understand? You have made such a massive barrier to entry that new people trying to become new content creators won't be able to cycle in and join this elite group. And this is a problem because inevitably, 100% of the time, it's only a matter of when, one of these people will stop producing for whatever reason. Maybe some huge scandal hits. Maybe they just retire. Maybe they can't think of anything new to do. But now you're down to 4 people. It's so obvious why this is stupid. It's actually a little frustrating. So now you're down to 4 people. In the current market, just about anybody can kind of slowly sift up through the ranks to the point where they become part of this 20%. And that's been happening. We have had people cycle in and cycle out of the top end in YouTube. I myself am at the low, like the high end of the low tier of YouTube. I'm a tiny little speck, but I have been slowly filtering my way up that low tier for the better part of the last 5 years. Because this is how YouTube basically functions. The longer you stick with it and the more you really push your brand, the more you kind of filter your way up. And thus we have new content producers who are basically always filtering up at every level to the point where that top 20% is cycling out new people on a semi-regular basis. Make sense? But you chop out that bottom 80%, you say, oh, we want to get rid of those little content creators. Now you've made it so that just even reaching the low tier where I'm at is suddenly this huge issue. Now let me go ahead and say, this YouTube thing will not hit me. I have way too many views and way too many subscribers for this to actually affect me personally. You know, Metal Sev, you're repeating yourself. I just want you to know that. But like I mean, do I even need to continue making my point here? I feel like I've kind of made my point rather clearly. This is stupid. There's no legitimately good reason to do this in my professional opinion, from an economical perspective even. And you know something is really messed up when, from an economic perspective, there's no reason to do something stupid. Yeah, actually, you know what? Boogie2988 is another example of someone who started off minuscule. I'm trying to think. There's actually a Swedish gentleman, and no, I don't mean the screeching guy. I mean, there's another one who started off very small. What exactly is YouTube doing? Well, what YouTube is doing is basically trying to remove monetization from the bottom 80% of its content creators. The people who don't have that many views, who don't have that much viewing, who don't have that much whatever. You know, the people who are small fish, like me. No, not Angry Joe. Oh, I know it's not Nobel. And High Hourglass. But yeah, this is... Now, I've heard several people... The most common thing I hear is that YouTube is trying to appease ad revenue and ad people. The really strange thing about that is that the more I hear about that, the less that makes sense. Like, yeah, Angry Joe's not Swedish. At least I don't think he's Swedish. The more I hear people say, oh, well, this is all to appease the ad people. That's not actually, this is not appeasing ad people. Now, there are certain things they've been doing over the last couple of years which were deliberately to appease ad people, but this is completely unrelated to that. This has nothing to do with ad people and ad revenue. It is worth noting that YouTube still actually makes a stupid amount of money even now off of ad revenue. It's actually one of many reasons why me removing PewDiePie. I was the other guy, but he's not the guy I was thinking of. He's not the guy I was thinking of. There's another Swedish gentleman. This may sound like a weird thing. Removing monetization from my show is actually defending my show's continued existence on YouTube, and that may sound strange, but what that means is all of their ad revenue that they put on my channel, on all my episodes and all my videos, is 100% theirs. I don't even claim a stake in that. And as a consequence, they are more likely to keep my videos up. I gotta be honest, I live in a near constant fear that someday YouTube might finally decide to shut me down, because if they do, I'm screwed. I will suddenly be incapable of eating and breathing. But, you know, demonetizing my own channel was one of the reasons I did that. Because you have to remember, when you demonetize something, it doesn't mean they take ads off. It just means I don't get paid ads from it. If only that were true. Okay. So anyways, I don't actually have much else to say about the YouTube thing. Like I said, this isn't really much. Don't even start about VidMe. I spit on VidMe. You know how silly VidMe would be? I could upload maybe a week or two's worth of content on VidMe a month with the restrictions they have on VidMe, because I've looked into it. No, the only other... how would I lose money, Sildeer? Because I wouldn't be producing content. I want you to I want you guys to look at me really quick and tell me honestly how many of you would continue being my patrons if I just stopped making videos. If Monday's TNG stuff, if Tuesday's DS9 stuff, and if Friday's Rumination stuff just stopped happening. Be honest. So, like I said, oh no, I'm not going to. You kidding me? Well, in fairness, I would probably still focus on Twitch. In fact, I would really focus on Twitch as best as I am. But it would also mean I suddenly have nowhere to put Twitch VODs. So, catch it live or within the next 2 weeks. Or that's it. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't actually... Apparently VidMe is not who I'm thinking of. Give me a second, I'll tell you who I'm thinking of. I've looked into several other companies, and they're all kind of crap. Who am I thinking of? Vimeo. Sorry, Vimeo was the other one I was thinking of. Yeah, VidMe's dead. I was thinking of Vimeo. My bad. Yeah, Vimeo's crap. Dailymotion is garbage. Dailymotion has severe restrictions on what they can do. No, I've said this before. I've said this again. The actual specific only other possible place I could go to upload my content is Pornhub. And that's not a joke. That's just the truth. So I am well aware of just how much I rely on YouTube. I admit I have anxiety and genuine fear over how much I rely on YouTube. This very video is going to go live to YouTube today and probably generate a few thousand views from a few thousand people, because Loreweeks tend to be one of my more viewed videos. Which would be crap. Pornhub doesn't have copyright at all. You want to go watch The Avengers right now on Pornhub? You can actually do that. That is not a joke. You can just go do that. Because they just do not give a crap about laws or legality or anything. Just, yeah, whatever. Just put whatever. It's actually one of the reasons Pornhub is the second biggest video thing right now, is because they don't give a crap. So lots and lots of people put lots and lots of illegal stuff on Pornhub. Not pornography. Anyways. What was I saying? We've gotten a little bit off topic here. That's true, I do have a website. Wink, wink. That's a good question, Anthony. The moment they stop making money through pornography. AKA when the sun explodes. So... Oh, God. I am... Why don't I... Look, I'm just saying, Preacher, that nobody cared about Primus. I shouldn't say it that way. Very, very few people cared about Primus. Like, exceptionally few. Like, I think about 70 or so people total cared about Primus. So Primus just kind of stopped. That's true, Schmeidoff. That's true. I'm going to chop this off. I'm going to take a very brief break to grab a fresh drink and everything. And then I'm going to switch. Oh, I also got to switch shirts. And then we're going to talk about some Romulans. God, I can't wait to talk about Romulans. So let's go talk about the Romulans. In a few minutes. I'll see you in a bit.